Good morning, everyone. I'm Ridhima Aggarwal from the Healthcare Management Initiative at INSEAD. It's a pleasure to welcome you to this webinar on harnessing data intelligence for medical diagnostics at Unilabs Portugal. Today, we'll be discussing the case of Unilabs, an organization leading data-driven medical diagnostics for hospitals, health systems, as well as individual patients. Together with Professor Stephen Chick, we will speak with Luis Menezes, CEO of Unilabs Portugal, and Jose Pedro Almeida, Data Intelligence Director at Unilabs Portugal as well, about the transformational journey of the organization. This webinar is part of our INTHECASE webinar series run by Digital at INSEAD with support from Accenture. The series allows us to explore recent cases published by INSEAD together with industry experts. They're meant to recreate class discussions online and to offer insights on best practices and frameworks for success. And INSEAD is a leader in case publishing, producing around 70 to 80 case studies per year, authored by INSEAD faculty and research staff. This webinar series spans a wide spectrum of topics focused on global digital transformation, providing a unique opportunity for industry practitioners to learn about the new cases being developed at INSEAD. So please do visit us at publishing.insead.edu to see our collection of over 2,000 cases. Before we get started, we actually have a set of poll questions. We would like to get a pulse for our audience in this webinar. And so we have two sets of questions. And first is, what sector are you working? And I will give it a couple of seconds for you to add in your responses. Just waiting on those results. Okay, so the majority of you are in the health sector. Okay, all right, so that's good. So the next question is have you or your organization launched an analytics transformation in the recent past? And I will give you another couple of seconds to add your responses here. Okay, the results should be coming in very soon. Okay, so the majority of you are in the health sector, and I think it looks like the response is not yet hoping to do so soon. That seems to be the majority of the audience here. We also have yes, but the results are still pending. That seems to be a common response as well. So hope today's discussion will help address some of your questions and your concerns, and we're looking forward to get started. So I would now like to welcome my colleague, Stephen Chick. Steve is a professor of technology and operations management, Novartis chair of the Healthcare Management Initiative, and the academic director of the Healthcare Management Initiative at INSEAD. He teaches operations management and business model innovation. His current research focus is value-based, highly adaptive clinical trials, and has been funded by the EU and the UK's National Institute for Health Research. He's an associate editor for the journal Management Science and is the vice president of the Informs Health Application Society. I will now pass it over to Steve to introduce the Unilabs case, as well as our other two speakers today. Steve?
Great. Thank you so much, Ridhima, for that introduction and getting us started. It's great to see so many people joining us today. I'm glad that you're tuning in, and hopefully we'll have a few frameworks and concrete examples to share with you along the way. Really, what I'm hoping to share today is really a story of maybe a tale of two cities. It's two different streams of research that I've been focusing on for a few years. One of them is something around industrial excellence, and the other is around some of the health transformations, some of the innovations that are going on in the health sector that we'll dive into, but that may have broader applicability. So I'm hoping that this session will not just be around health, although it's great to see health so strongly represented here today. Two frameworks. Framework one, the Industrial Excellence Award Framework. This is a project that started out at INSEAD, but then was co-developed with our colleagues at WHU, Arndt Hoeksermaier, and then spread out to a number of other countries through the years. It's essentially a research study and awards program around identifying what is world-class performance at a manufacturing plant level. Now, why that in this context here? Well, I think ultimately, as we look at digital transformations and the type of work that Unilabs has done, it's not just about employing digital technologies. It's around solving problems better or solving new problems. And in this award study, which was more in the industrial space, manufacturers such as Siemens, BMW, Sanofi, a number of organizations doing some great work to deliver on the value propositions that they're intending to deliver on. And when we started out in that project, it was really focusing on plant level, manufacturing plant level behavior. So you can think of a single unit of an organization, from 100 to a couple thousand people working in the plant. In the early years of that study, it was really around lean manufacturing. You could be world-class in your sector if you would implement lean manufacturing and effective manufacturing practice within the four walls of your institution. After a few years, however, what we noticed that to really be competitive at an international level, and primarily France and Germany at first, but now into a number of additional countries that you can see here on the map, it's really a story about process mastery. It's not just within the four walls of the plant, it's working with suppliers, it's collaborations with supply chain partners. It's about thinking about what value am I creating tomorrow through new product development, process improvement. And if you were good at two or three of those core processes, you could be world-class as well. Probably about 10 years ago, what we observed was that competitiveness at this manufacturing plant level really became a story about top-down, bottom-up communication and improvement. So our improvements is looking forward to the future really coming from the top, or are there a lot of bottom-up ideas bubbling up? And how do you balance that tension between top-down communication and bottom-up improvements? How do you link those together and execute on a strategy? So the questionnaire we had for implementing that was helping us to disentangle some of those issues in that space. And so we've got a couple of books out on that topic, and had an article in HBR, Europe Solution Factories, a couple of years ago. I'd invite you to click on this link. We'll send out the notes after the session. Hopefully that will give you a sense of some of the great things that some amazing organizations have done by engaging teams, collaboration inside the organization, using something that we call the management quality framework. It's about leaders of organizations, and we'll see Luis Menezes in just a few moments around his vision. It's about delegation of improvement activities. In order to delegate effectively, you need to communicate with teams. You need to engage participation of those teams. You need to measure progress, and to make sure that that progress is effective, it's about developing people. And then taking those improvements and looping that back into the overall organization, be that delivering on value today, be it improving coordination with supply partners, and in health space, that's certainly an interesting challenge, and thinking about new products and processes for tomorrow. And we'll see all of those elements exhibited in the case today. So the management quality framework is framework one that I hope emerges in our discussion today in exploring this truly extraordinary achievements at Unilabs in Portugal. The second framework that I'd love to kind of set out here for the discussion is around some of what we're seeing in terms of transformations in healthcare today. Healthcare is a fundamentally human activity. I mean, that's individuals who are sick or needing help with getting better or improving their health status. It's a fundamentally human activity. For many years in healthcare delivery, which is providing that service, a lot of the activity is focused around continuous improvement, patient flows, leaning out the system. And we've seen some of the consequences of being too lean as we've needed to adapt in the context of our current COVID pandemic. So I think there's this tension here. There's a tension between disciplined execution of what we need to do today versus creativity and being different and adapting to some of the needs that are coming along moving forward. We need to have some new mental models, some new conceptual models about how the business model of healthcare should be working or can be working. How do we use data to improve decision-making? And what are the limits of that empowerment of people on front lines with data? So that's essentially the focus of the case today, is bringing together these two frameworks, the Industrial Excellence Award, which is really around how do I improve agility, how do I execute, how do I, on the strategy, how do I use collaboration with front lines, top down, bottom up engagement and processes to improve the value proposition, and some of the neat things around business model innovation that we're seeing hitting healthcare today, whether it's digital health and telemedicine, whether it's analytics and AI and medical decision-making. How do these come together into effective new value propositions for helping the health of our populations? So those are the two frameworks that some of the research studies that we've been doing have been focusing on. And I think diagnostics is an incredibly good application area to focus our attention. Healthcare is an incredibly complex space with healthcare insurers, governmental payers, regulators. We've got pharmaceutical companies, diagnostics companies, hospitals, primary care. We've got a lot of different organizations where there are touch points with the patient, with humans, beyond patients, along the value chain of creating and sustaining health. And diagnostics is particularly exciting because there's patient data at lots and lots of different time points in our life, above and beyond our PCR tests that we're being asked to get with the COVID situation. So we've got diagnostic measures, which is really around helping diagnosis, as the name might sound. Prognostic, how is the disease progression likely to have? Predictive, is the treatment going to be effective or not? So we have a lot of interesting things here. Diagnostics data is along the whole path of the value chain in healthcare. And so that makes it uniquely situated to be able to try to bring together some of this incredibly highly dimensional data along the care pathway. Payers might not have access to as much of the medical information, for example. They have financial information, visit information, but diagnostics is really in a neat space to take advantage and really rethink how health might be improved in populations. So that leads us to the Unilabs case study. It's a story about becoming an analytics-driven organization. Unilabs is active in 15 countries, and our speakers will be able to share a bit more with us about some of their activities, both in the business to business, so providing lab services, imaging services to hospitals, to clinics, but also B2C, people needing to get tests coming off the street, say, upon reference from their general practitioner. So there's large-scale clients and individual customer clients. Through a series of mergers and acquisitions of bringing together individuals from a lot of different labs, how do you unite that? How do you become an analytics-driven organization when data is very disparate, when data is segmented? How can we bring all of that together? It's a very interesting challenge. Alignment in organization. How do we bring the different stakeholders, the different types of tests that are being used, the different specialties? These are high-tech specializations here around medical imaging, around other pathology tests. How do we bring that together and get a single source of truth, so to speak, ready for everybody to use? And so that's a huge leadership challenge, and it's a huge technical challenge all at once. I think one of the things that we've been seeing in the context of our current health crisis is that analytics can step up to the table and provide services in new ways around managing international travel, around school closings, around the opening up of the terraces again here in France for restaurants, which everybody's very excited about. We also think about medical decision-making in terms of AI and some of the neat things that can be done around cancer treatment. But there's a lot of other things that can be done with analytics as well. Just improving internal operations. improving existing services to make things run just that much better. So I think that's what I'm hoping to focus on in the case today, looking at some of the great ways and challenges along the way of Unilabs Portugal as they tried to rethink their internal operations, rethinking their call centers, trying to find solutions for customers who don't necessarily want to just make an appointment at their special clinic, but need to get a clinic appointment quickly in terms of something that's convenient and local near them, but might not be their usual clinic. How can we make a match there? Some of the analytics work in the background of creating a data cube to keep track of the scheduling information for all of the clinics at once, really reducing the amount of time required to schedule an appointment and to allow people to find their way through the system in a much more efficient way, to improving the analytics processing of all the lab samples in the background. There's a huge supply chain issue with blood samples, tissue samples being driven all over the country to the lab testing centers for processing. How can we improve those? How can we rethink how the results, once the data is ready, how can we rethink how those results are there, using, for example, how Netflix will cluster your tastes about movies, how Stitch Fix has published algorithms to help cluster themes together, customer desires, and applying that to, are there certain patients that we need to react with much more quickly? Some exciting technological developments in that space as well. And finally, development of new services and some thoughts around antibiotic prescription. This is one of the huge challenges that the World Health Organization has highlighted for us. There are other conditions out there besides COVID, ladies and gentlemen. This is one of the big challenges, and I know our friends from Unilabs have some really neat thoughts about this and some other new services that they've had to be thinking about in the context of this COVID challenge. So with that, I'd like to really invite Luis Menezes and Jose Pedro Almeida. If you could start sharing yourself on the video, I'd really appreciate that. We're really thankful for the time and energy that you've given to us, and in terms of helping to document in this case, but also thank you for your amazing work on the front lines of this COVID pandemic and all of the things that you've done over the last several years to put Portugal in certainly a much better place, and hopefully some of those lessons will be able to go a bit further. These are a bit of bios for both of you. Luis, you've been working with Unilabs Portugal since 2006. You're a former member of the Portuguese Parliament. You've got a multinational leadership role now, and delighted to be able to say that you're an alumnus of INSEAD, the Advanced Management Program, among some other wonderful things that you've been involved with educationally in terms of impact. Now, Jose Pedro, it's been great to have known you over the last 4 or 5 years, and seeing some of the great things that you've been doing with analytics and antibiotics stewardship back in hospitals, and now some of the amazing things you're doing in terms of enabling this data intelligence transformation at Unilabs in Portugal. Shall we turn it over to you? We'd love to hear some of your thoughts. Ridhima, would you care to launch off the discussion that we have? Thank you both for joining us here today. Just have
the floor is yours.
So first of all, thank you for the invitation, both to Stephen, to Ridhima, and to INSEAD. The first thing I have to say is how surprised we were when we were requested by Stephen and Ridhima to do this case study. And the reason being is that at the time we had started our DECTA project in less than 1 year. That's one. And secondly, I thought there would be so many cool and interesting places to visit before doing a case study with a company that started this project 12 or 16 months before. And when we met, I started to understand two things. First, that you were not here by chance, which I could imagine. And unfortunately, in healthcare, we are not using data as we should. And secondly, that in a very small amount of time, we were capable of starting and putting the basis for the transformation that has been happening now and that continues to happen since we started working on this project. The first thing is going a little bit to what you said, and I will be mindful of time, is healthcare is one of the few industries that has the most data of all, because most of the time, you know who is prescribing an exam or a surgery. Most of the time, you know the entire demographics of the people that are using your services. You know the results. You have huge historical figures for these individuals. And nowadays, like you were saying in other industries like Netflix or Stitch and Fix, where the algorithms that they are developing are creating tremendous value to those companies, but also to us as customers. On the case of Stitch and Fix, we receive 5 pieces. Well, we keep 3 or 4, so we also have a benefit of it. The data that the healthcare industry has, namely the healthcare hospital industry and the diagnostic industry in particular, is tremendous and needs to be engaged with. And when we started the project, we were in a place where we had done a reverse merger here in Portugal. It was at the time the second largest acquisition of the Unilabs group as a whole. And we had a set of almost 80 companies with different systems to work on, with different HR systems to work on. So we had the traditional legacy system problem when you are doing M&A, but with the bigger problem that the company that we bought was also a platform in itself. So they had this problem and they had to solve it. So long story short, when I met Jose Pedro, it was, I believe, April 2019. I did my AMP in July, and that's when Jose Pedro decided finally to come in, and he entered in November 2018. We were in a place where we had too much information spread, not the capability of converging that information into actionable information for management. And also, we had a structure at the time, and I'll speak a little bit more about that later, where we were not capable, as we are today, of using this information. Because what we did, and I'll talk about it later, is that we were able to democratize the access to the analytics information we are creating. But looking back, and I would pass on to Jose Pedro after this, was that we understood as a company and as a group that we needed this transformation. Our current CEO of the entire group, Michiel Boomer, was at the time the regional director for this region. And he clearly understood what we could bring into the table after we understood what Jose Pedro was doing before at the Hospital de São João. And I think the secret that has been allowing us to do what we are doing, I would say, is threefolded. The first one is having a strong data intelligence team inside. The second was doing things right from the beginning. And I think this is a part that I would like to emphasize, because Jose Pedro was very adamant to do things right from the beginning. But also, one thing we were adamant was about speed. And we were able to do what Jose Pedro and the team thought it would take 5 years in less than 1 year and a half. So I think that the industry needs some change. Analytics will be here to change it, and analytics will enter the strategy arena in healthcare sooner than later, but it needs to be done in the right way. And this is what I learned as a CEO of the company in Portugal and a member of also my executive team at the European level, is that you need to do things right to be able to use the full power of data like we are using today, with some stories that we'll share during the webinar. Jose Pedro.
Thank you, Luis. What a great introduction. I'm going to speak more about what I felt from coming into Unilabs, which was a private company I had never worked, and my team as well. And picking up on what Luis was saying, when I was approached by him, he was speaking to me about all this challenge of all this data that they had. Back then it was they, now it's us. But they didn't have the solution, let's say like this, to transform that data into knowledge and into actionable knowledge. And we had some past experience at one of the largest hospital centers in Portugal, which was quite complex in transforming this data into knowledge, not only for the management side, but also for the clinical side, and bringing some clinical intelligence along. But what I would like to emphasize, which is really the very beginning of this, is the buy-in that you need from the senior leadership team, and also from a broader perspective, from our entire Unilabs group. And as Luis was saying, Michiel Boomer was also keen to let us in this project. But the buy-in is not an occasional pronouncement. What I've seen and what has brought us in was Luis and the senior leadership team passion. They really wanted to make this move forward. They understood that this is not one more project. This needs to be seen as one of the cores of the company. And being able to set the stage for this is what really led us to start this, and after some time to overachieve in terms of results. And at the same time, what I realized was that they had a vision also, not only to bring us in to help them manage the company. As Luis was saying, 80 different companies, it's a mess for someone who's trying to take decisions. So they had this need, and this was urgent. So this need for speed was something that they really passed to the team. We felt that, and we also needed to change some of our preconceptions that we had from our past, that we needed to build everything from scratch by the book. This was not possible. So Luis and the team, they passed us that we need to move fast, and we learned a lot from that. But most of all, they had also a dream to bring more than just results to their customers. And I think that was the key point that brought us together, was seeing, okay, they want to have the tools to better manage the company, but they also have a broader and a longer objective, which is use this data to provide more than just results, to provide clinical intelligence that can really proactively reach out to our customers, to our patients, and identify patients at risk, which was what we were doing in a smaller environment, a single hospital. They wanted to do this for the whole country. They had millions of customers, and Luis was very passionate in passing this mission to us. And eventually we came along and we started with this in this environment. And I would like to emphasize that the environment, the buy-in from the top, is absolutely crucial to ignite this transformation. And I'll pass to you.
Great. Thank you both for your comments, Luis and Jose Pedro. I would like to dive into some questions now. You've talked about, you both talked about some of the major drivers behind the need for data analytics. For example, too much information spread, lack of solutions to transform data into actionable knowledge. So that being said, there's often inertia in organizations. So as you thought about addressing some of these issues, what were some of the internal roadblocks that you were facing, and how did you address those, both on the people side as well as technology?
I would give my quick take, and I would let also Jose Pedro give his. So I think Jose Pedro had come from a project where he had a lot of roadblocks. The first one, it was a public hospital that, by the way, is one of the best in Europe, which is Hospital São João. And but when we started talking, he told me, look, this will happen, this will happen, this will happen, this will happen. And Jose Pedro, we started this project with Jose Pedro reporting directly to me in the beginning, and he's still reporting directly to the senior executive team with a very strong presence and influence in the senior executive team. And I would say that the empowerment and the ability that we gave him to say, look, we are going this way. Anyone that puts himself in your way for not a valid reason, just because that person is defending its turf, just because that person is afraid of something else, or we don't know what, that cannot happen. So you call me or you call any SLT member. And that empowerment from the top, because this brings a lot of disruption, Ridhima, that we feel that. And I will, one of the things that I discussed with Jose Pedro was that we need to bring small wins. So that's why I battled a little about Jose Pedro's mindset of being 100% right. We needed some small wins to start to have some ambassadors that would say, hey, this is changing the way I work. I can save 2 or 3 days per month because now this is done by the data sets that we have, and this is done automatically. So I think a really strong and true empowerment from the top in the beginning is critical, so that there cannot be any roadblocks. There needs to be people inside the organization that take them immediately away. And the small win mindset that both Jose Pedro and myself, we understood that it would be critical to get the teams involved. Jose Pedro, what would you say?
Yeah, well, I have the same reasoning. I would say that in order to, it's the empowerment also sends a message to the company, and message is I think that data is important. Data not being one more project, I think, was critical to ignite the transformation, and what I felt and what the team felt when we started the project was also that we had the space to really cooperate with all the departments, and that's something I think we really felt was the culture of the company. It's very important. They were everybody in every department. They were quite excited to work with us. They helped us. They taught us as well. So concepts like P&L, EBITDA, those were all strange to us. So just to get for people to get a sense of everything that we had to learn, and to learn this stuff, you learn from them, from every department, and being able to see that there was a buy-in from the top, and that at the same time every department was willing to help us, which, as Luis was saying, was quite strange to us, because from our past, not every department was willing to help us, but I felt at Unilabs that everybody was willing to do so, because they were so frustrated at the same time not having the data to take decisions. They really wanted to do more, but they didn't have the data. And so this was a win-win partnership. You go, you have, I think we had like 40 different meetings in a week. And that's also something that management helped block the agendas of every director, which is quite important. And we captured a lot of Excel files from everyone, more than 400, and being able to join the teams, to understand what they really need, not what you think they need, but what they really need, and bringing and building something along with them. I think is transformational and helped us a lot to ignite this.
Ridhima, if I can add one thing, once in a conference, an internal conference we had, we made the question to ourselves as a group, where we said, what if Unilabs knew what Unilabs knows? And this was an international conference we had. And what I think that data is enabling in Unilabs Portugal today, and we'll talk a little bit where we are today, is that we are being able to get to know what the entire Unilabs Portugal knows through data. small things, small tweaks that happen every day. And people started to understand how this could really help change their life for the better, because this has a tremendous impact inside of the organization for the better. But the first impact is also one of fear of my job can be at risk, when people don't understand that we need their value and their brain power to add value in the day-to-day, not in the data crunching. And but this allows to bring the knowledge of the company closer, and for us to really know what the true knowledge of the company is nowadays.
Great, thank you. So I guess a lot of points have been discussed here. So if you were to summarize some of the key success factors and challenges organizationally in terms of moving this forward, could you highlight some of those, and then also maybe share an example or two?
Personally, I like to start with the end in mind, always. And Jose Pedro and I, alongside with the two other members of Unilabs Portugal, we had a meeting in 2019, Jose Pedro, I think, which was, in the end of the day, where do we really want to get? We want to get into a place where people can use this information at every level of the organization. We want to democratize. So we have a small drawing that we still keep today. And I will give you the example through that. But we were an organization. The data helped us change the way we organized our org structure. Sorry for the redundancy. But we were siloed in specialties and functional areas. And nowadays, the way we are working is that we have the functional areas, and then we have one single area, which is the patient area, which is called the customer experience area, where every interaction with the patient is coordinated there, and the functions are there to support this part of the company. And one of the main reasons why we changed into this model was because, if I look back, I have to say, because of the way we were able to start to use data quickly, and by the way that data has put in front of us exactly how wrongly we were doing this. Because in the end of the day, every service is about the customer, but in healthcare, many times the customer is a patient. Okay, and so this data strategy that we started, when we decided to change the organization, was the main driver from where I stand as a leader of the company in Portugal, to change the organization into the direction we did. So customer focused and a very bottom-up organization, but also giving the tools. And I would pass to Jose Pedro, because the tool that we created, which was data to the field, is a tool that is now being used all around the country by our frontline people, that they spend 5 minutes per day looking at that info. And it was, from my experience, the most powerful tool we have created. Jose Pedro, can you just give a little bit of light maybe about what it is?
Yeah, sure. So what Luis is saying is something that we achieve after we build the foundations of all this, which is to connect several business data points from several areas and several systems to concentrate all this information and to be able to send it to the field, to our hundreds of collection centers and clinics daily in an automated fashion, having also some tools for them to reply to us and saying what they are seeing through the data, and how can we change the business continuously based on what they are feeling in the field. And so there was a disconnection between all of these business areas and being able to communicate clearly to them and receive the feedback from them. But I would like to lose maybe 2 minutes with what I think it's the critical success factor to get here, because before getting here, there was a lot of work from a lot of teams in building this stuff. So when you are able to send this data to all the collection centers and clinics, you're already there. But before this, and I think that companies underestimate the effort that you need building these bridges with the business teams. Because as Luis was saying, first, you need to help the business teams getting their life better. So some of these business teams, they will lose 1, 2, 3 weeks just crunching through data from several systems, compiling all that stuff in Excel to get a report for somebody. And so you can imagine the life of somebody like this is a chaos. And when you suddenly really bridge with them and you help them save 3 weeks of time, because you are able to send that same data in a flash of a second, they start partnering more and more with you. But throughout this process, what is really important is achieving not only a single source of truth, which is critical, so getting all the data in a single place to take decision and disconnected from the IT legacy, but mostly a single source of trust. And trust is something that really needs time. I must emphasize the work of my team here as well, because we have been obsessed with data quality throughout the years. This means that every time a business manager or somebody in the field tells us that a small number in some KPI is wrong, we stop. We stop everything that we are doing and we will correct that number. And being obsessed in this kind of reasoning and automating also this process of gaining trust takes time, takes hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of interactions of people saying this is wrong and we correcting. And one day things start to be right. And when things start to be right, people trust, people use the data, and people feel empowered to do more.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jose Pedro. Thank you, Luis, for those comments. I mean, I'm hearing, on the one hand, it's about getting data into people's hands. I'm hearing having this single source of data truth, if you will, so that everybody's working with the same information is very, very important. I'm hoping we can turn to a couple of the questions that we're seeing into the Q&A box here. I mean, there seems to be a lot of interest in what might be specific examples where you're saving that couple of weeks or you're providing new value to customers. So there's some questions here around, are these new things, are they around saving, is it about an innovative business model, or is this about cost cutting? I'm seeing some questions in here about, can you give us some specific examples of how your process has changed and how does that affect your end customer? How do you, any quick reactions? What would be your favorites there?
Being an operations man, let's put it this way, Stephen, I would say that there were one of the slides you've shown was a dashboard that the team created with the lab team. And again, like Jose Pedro said, this is all about teams working together. And what started as a distrust process immediately went and created a tidal wave of people wanting to interact with the data team. So that's also a very, very interesting cultural shift that happened. But going to concrete examples, for instance, the dashboard that you saw is a live dashboard that allows the teams to know where the samples are. Like you said, it's a very tough logistical issue. It's the next one. This is the patient one. It's the one where you have the cars. So this dashboard basically here in the middle shows you the middle graph shows you the usual arrival of the samples. The black part, and the yellow part is showing you how the samples arrived that day. So what you see here is clearly that it's a peak day, because the pattern of the curve of the arriving samples is more or less the same. but you had more samples in this given day. And the teams knowing that this will arrive and when it will arrive, what's in transport or not, allows the lab to prepare itself for the kind of day that we'll have. So this is an operational example. The second one may seem very simple, but like Jose Pedro said, it took us, I don't know, 2 to 3 weeks to understand how the last 6 months patient looked like. And with using the information that, and I will get back to this very many times because I have to respect Jose Pedro on this because he was the great mindset shifter of all of us, is because we did things right since the beginning and we structured the information in the right way. We were able to go into our database, which is pretty structured. There were some questions about how structured our data is. It's pretty structured, it's very solid, it's very deep into each customer because it needs to be in healthcare. So we as an industry have that advantage. But the customer segmentation, we just have a click and we can see our customer segmentation per sex, per age, where do we do home care, what is the kind of people that use, for instance, our home care services. And we understood in that concrete example that home care was delivered 85% to people above 80 years old. And we thought, and we knew that there was a big chunk of people, younger, much younger even, that would like to have their blood test at home or their ECG at home. So what did we do? We created a home care division inside the company that is nowadays focusing on this because we saw this piece of information that in the midst of all the information we had, we were not able to see. And also finally, the data to the field project. But if you could, Jose Pedro, could you go so that I don't speak too much into that project? And if you want, you could even show one of the dashboards of one of our collection centers.
Well, I would also like to emphasize this because I think it's important for the audience. This piece of getting the foundations right. So I was talking about the trust issue and the need to partner with the teams, but getting the foundations right was something that we really discussed with the senior leadership team, which was you somehow need to separate what is the IT systems projects from the data ones. And why? Because you need to move at a different speed, because IT projects, they are worried about integrating systems with one another. And what we have done is we've built a data platform or a data factory, as you can call it, that is able to analyze all the business data points and to correlate those business data points without interfering with the IT projects. And that allows us to build a foundation that took time. It was first based on our sales, and you can read in the case the Unisales solutions that we brought in the first place, where we could see all the sales and drill down, as Luis was saying, by customer, by region, by gender. So being able to develop something that is able to adapt itself to any business question, because I have a team or 2 or 3 people, we are not able to do a report for every business person. It's impossible. This simply doesn't scale. What you need to do is a solution that has the answers for these people to really deep dive and get the answer in an automated way, in an autonomous way, for them to be able to be empowered. Because if they are waiting for someone of the data team to send them the data, that simply won't scale. This is the first thing. And afterwards, what we started seeing with this Unilab project, with the call center project, is when you have the foundation right, is how fast you are able to bring new data products on top of this. And I will give one example besides the lab that Luis already spoke about, which eventually also helped us move faster during the pandemic, during COVID, because everything that we have done there was based on that solution for the lab that we had previously built. But another example that I will briefly speak about is the call center. We had that Unisales solution where we could see all the sales by doctor, by region, by customer, and so forth. And when we went to the call center, they had books of 200 or 300 pages just to know each call center operator, just to know where each doctor worked. And we were like, this is already in Unisales. So you just need to build something that is really quick. We took 3 days to build this. We built a dashboard over the same data platform where they could just click and see, oh, this doctor works here Mondays afternoon. Okay, so when the customer is on hold, suddenly that call might have a 50 to 1 minute less duration because you put the data in front of the operator, and this also boosts our customer experience, because one thing is the customer waiting for 3 to 4 minutes, and another thing is the customer waiting 2 minutes. And so this reasoning of getting new data projects very fast on top of the data platform that was built is critical, and the data to the field is just one of those examples where we had success because we had the foundations right and we had the time to build this right.
Thanks, Jose Pedro. Yeah, so we have a lot of questions coming in the Q&A, which is fantastic. I think some are around data, right? So the data models and whether the data is unstructured. So maybe you can speak to that a little bit. And so the follow-up question, I guess, is there's the next question is around what are probably the most effective quick wins, right? So maybe that would be the next question to answer, Luis, potentially. So data models, right? So what does the data look like? Is it unstructured? And also around interpretation of data. How do you ensure that interpretation across different stakeholders within the organization is aligned?
So I can start. Okay, Luis,
sure. Go.
Very quickly, you need to design a data platform that is able to capture any type of data. Is it text? Is it structured? Is it image? Is it sound? And what we are currently doing is also moving to the cloud, because we have the tools there to capture and analyze this data and build the algorithms. For instance, text mining algorithms are already available there, where we can crunch the data much faster to provide new services. So you need to build things that will be able to adapt to any kind of data, because currently the data comes in all kinds of formats, and in healthcare, unstructured data that comes from text is one of the most common patterns you can find. And I pass to you, Luis.
Thank you. First, the data is very structured in healthcare. Like I said, you have the demographics, you have the results, you have history. But again, I would always emphasize this, that you need to have time to make things right, and you need to do things right. Because I had a question here, Ridhima, and I don't know if I can go to one of the questions we had here, because someone was asking in the Q&A, how did we use this for COVID? And again, I'm going to repeat myself. The reason why, I will say, why were we so successful in COVID in Portugal as a company? Because we were very quick to put a data tool that helped to control the lab. And let's try and understand, on one side, diagnostic companies were closing their normal businesses like everyone else in 2020 and creating a startup, which was the COVID area with molecular biology, that, by the way, there were no machines in Europe at the time. So almost no machines in Europe. So what we immediately did was we created a tool for the lab so that we could deliver in the right turnaround times. Where were the bottlenecks happening in the lab? At the same time, we created commercial tools. So for our customers, we opened more than 50 drive-thrus through the country. We have more than 100 collection centers doing that. And we can see where at each time, so if I open now the app, we can see exactly, this is one of our of the things that we have, but we can see where the volumes are. We can see the positivity rates. If they are growing in a certain area, we can reinforce for the next day and the next days the teams there, because probably we will have more volumes to grab. So the tool allowed us to have the lab in order on one side, and it allows us to commercially be in the right places on the ground to support the country for the pandemic. But why were we able to do this so quickly? Because we had the right data structure since the beginning. Because the data was there, the cube was constructed in the proper way, and when we wanted to ask a different question to the cube, which was, how is the COVID lab, the test COVID-19, test XYZ, that is done in this lab working? So we did a specific dashboard for it. And what I think that many of the data projects that I see, and there are many data projects inside our group. So we are in more than 15 countries, like Steven said. And I think that the difference is that most times companies, and even us as companies, sometimes we go into the data projects on an opportunistic way. I want to see the sales today. And this was one of my mistakes in the beginning, so I have no problem in saying that. And Jose Pedro said, well, I will not give them tomorrow, but I will give you in 1.5 months, I will give you in a different way, and you will be able to ask different questions when you want to change the templates. So data analytics today is too much opportunistic. You shoot down a problem, but you don't create the solution to really harness the true power of data inside. But if we didn't have data, we clearly would not be the market leader in Portugal supporting the country in COVID as we were. So this is a clear example of why doing things right from the beginning allowed us to grab the opportunity in full.
Thank you. So we've always thought of COVID as a challenge for organizations, and I think you've shared some great examples of opportunities that COVID has enabled for Unilabs in terms of new services. So just, I guess, a final question is what's next for, what's next within analytics for Unilabs as we get past the COVID crisis, hopefully?
I would just give our vision, and I would let Jose Pedro dive into the more specific details. I believe that the diagnostic industry needs to deliver more than results. So, and this is our vision from some time ago. The results in our historics today can tell us a lot of things about tomorrow. Stephen was saying that the healthcare models that we have are almost outdated. It was a little bit what you were saying. And I even wrote for myself that something that is a very well-known phrase, but the model was based for sick care. We have hospitals that were created around fighting infection, fighting different, not to prepare to fight chronic disease illness like we have today. So we need to go from sick care to preventive care, or to understand that the mindset should be, let's not allow people to get sick because that is cheaper for the system as a whole. And in order to do this, we need data. We need data to try and understand what are the hidden patterns inside clinical analysis that are there and that can help us and the system save money going forward. What are in the imaging area, and I would love Jose Pedro to share this project, which is one of his projects. What can we develop in the imaging area, in histopathology, in radiology, where you don't have doctors and you have a huge increase in demand? How can you create algorithms using all your historical data that help your doctors do a better job with more quality, because they are not machines, they are regular people like everyone else here, and they do mistakes. So how can we reduce the mistakes and at the same time increase the efficiency, allowing to do more? So the future, in my view, is that we need to deliver an holistic solution to the patient. We are a diagnostic company, we don't treat, so we just can go up to a place. And in the end of the day, we might discuss whatever we want, but at some point in time, we will need to have a single healthcare record for each of us, because that will be the only way to secure that our data is used by everyone in a way that saves money for the system. Because we didn't talk about this here, but the system will need to change dramatically in order for us to continue to sustain it. Jose Pedro.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt on that note. I'm getting a signal that our time is up. I'd really like to thank you both for your amazing inputs on this case. And there's a lot more information that we could go into. A lot of really nice examples about improving the call center, about identifying outliers in procurement, about getting information about patterns of health demand in different regions for different reasons, about improving the speed of delivery on lab results and services that are prioritized, and on some amazing things you've done with the COVID response in Portugal, and now shining a light more broadly. There were a few more questions regarding frameworks and so forth. And some of the things that I really found was really, really neat here was you took the time to get the foundations right. And that example of, yeah, I can do this in 2 days, but if you give me a month, month and a half, I can give you all of these other things. It's about prioritizing. It's about setting the base framework, the ground truth of data right. I thought that was really, really great. I love the way you've engaged people from different parts of the organization, be it from the senior leadership team to the people handling the lab results in the laboratory and the testing facilities, to the people in the call centers, trying to get people with faster appointments. It's just all the dimensions of internal operations, improving existing services, and developing new services such as this COVID agile response, enabled by people engagement, about having a single source of truth. Thank you so much for sharing that information. I love how you've set that vision about let's be data-driven, let's be information-driven, about getting top-down and bottom-up communication going, and relentlessly measuring and having the accurate data to let people make those improvements, to let people on the front lines shine, for example, in your COVID activities. Thank you so much, both of you. I see that there are some questions in here which we've not 100% answered. There are a number of questions that are still in the open category. We can try to come back to those if we haven't covered them. Some of them have been implicitly covered by some of the points here. Thank you all for joining us today, and we look forward to keeping in touch with you. Jose Pedro, thank you so much. It's been a distinct pleasure. Luis, thank you so much. I got to get back to Portugal sometime soon, and of course, you're always welcome back to Fonte.
Please do.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the team as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Ridhima. Thank you, Sandra. Yeah. Thank you.